On the record to hear the case of Donald Erickson v. Germantown School District. It's case number CR 2022013111. Today's date is August 14th, 2024, and this hearing is being conducted using Microsoft Teams video conferencing software. My name is Joseph Surge. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear this matter. We were set to begin at 9:30. It is now 9:48 a.m. So why don't we start with appearances. Attorney Hitchcock Cross, please state your appearance and spell your name for the record, and Mr. Erickson's as well.
Hi, this is Ben Hitchcock Cross, Hitchcock, appearing on behalf of and with Mr. Erickson, the complainant here. Will you spell your name, please?
It's Erickson.
And Attorney Pollard.
Thank you, Judge. Attorney Kevin Pollard appears on behalf of the respondent, Germantown School District. Also present is Brittany Eltendorf, Director of Business Services and Auxiliary Services for the district, as the representative from the district today.
Thank you. All right, addressing the procedural history of the case, the complaint was filed on May 6th of 2022. An initial determination was issued on September 6th of 2023. It found no probable cause to believe that the respondent had violated the Wisconsin Fair Employment Act by one, discriminating against the complainant because the complainant filed or the respondent believed the complainant had filed or would file a complaint under the Wisconsin wage payment law. It's Wisconsin statute 109.03. And two, discriminating against the complainant because the complainant filed or the respondent believed the complainant had filed or would file a complaint under the Wisconsin hours of labor law. And that's Wisconsin statute 103.022. Mr. Erickson filed a timely appeal. A notice of hearing on the issue of probable cause was issued by the Equal Rights Division on June 14th of this year, and it set a video conference hearing for today, tomorrow, and Friday, August 14th, 15th, and 16th. And the issues to be heard are whether there's probable cause to believe that the respondent violated the Wisconsin Fair Employment Act by one, discriminating against the complainant because the complainant filed or the respondent believed the complainant had filed or would file a complaint under the Wisconsin wage payment law. Again, that is Wisconsin statute 109.03. And two, discriminating against the complainant because the complainant filed or the respondent believed the complainant had filed or would file a complaint under the Wisconsin hours of labor law. That's Wisconsin statute 103.022. The complainant bears the burden to prove unlawful discrimination, and he will present his case first. The respondent will then be given an opportunity to present its case, and then we can discuss the need for any rebuttal witnesses. Are there any initial items now that we're on the record that we should deal with before we begin with testimony?
No, Judge, but just to confirm, each party will share the screen and display its own exhibits. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, well, then we're ready to proceed.
All right,
Judge,
attorney,
for the response, I just see
let me jump in. There is. That was my one to jump in. So, who is going to be your first witness, Attorney Hitchcock Cross?
Well, who's up first? Who's online?
I believe we have two. I believe we have Ms. Mon, and then it may be Ms. Parmenter.
Okay.
I apologize to both if I am butchering the names.
That's fine. We can do Ms. Parmenter first, just as a courtesy to her. That should be no problem. Okay.
Then Ms. Mon, I'm gonna remove you from the meeting simply because we have a sequestration order in place, so witnesses can't be present during other witnesses' testimony. Attorney Hitchcock Cross or someone from his office will work with you or coordinate with you to give you an idea of when to log in.
Fantastic.
Am I correct that you are Ms. Parmenter?
Yes.
All right, and am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Attorney Pollard, I know you had raised the number of people in the recording. One moment, it looks like we've had another one jump in, and I'll keep an eye on this. Mr. Lentz has jumped in. Mr. Lenz, I'm going to, for the moment, there's a sequestration order in place. You haven't been called as a witness yet, so I am going to remove you from the meeting. Attorney Hitchcock Cross will, or his office will coordinate with you to let you know when to log in. And you're muted, Mr. Lenz, but that's perfectly fine. I can see you saying okay.
Thank you.
All right, Attorney Pollard, I wanted to give you an opportunity to, since we jumped into this, was there anything you wanted to deal with now that we're on the record before we jump into witness testimony?
No, Judge, we can proceed.
All right, Attorney Hitchcock, Hitchcock Cross, will you please formally call your first witness?
Yes, the complainant calls Ms. Parmenter.
All right. Good morning, Ms. Parmenter.
Morning.
My name is Joseph Surge. I'm the administrative law judge handling this hearing. So in a moment, I'm going to swear you in, but there's a couple things that I want to just give you an idea of what's going to happen. So we're going to begin with direct examination from Attorney Hitchcock Cross. Attorney Pollard will have a chance to cross-examine you after that. And then I will allow the parties to go back and forth until we start repeating ourselves or we're getting into cumulative evidence. So it'll be a little bit of back and forth. There may be a point where I need to jump in, but that's a rough idea of how we're going to proceed at this point, okay?
Okay.
All right, will you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You can put your hand down. Can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Melissa Parmenter, Melissa Parmenter.
Thank you. And just to confirm, is there anybody else in the room with you?
No.
All right. Do you have any documents or anything in front of you related to this case?
I have some notes that I took when I talked to Mr. Cross's paralegal, and then I also have some notes that I had taken of an incident that had happened.
What I'm going to ask at this point is that you flip those over and that you not reference them because we need your firsthand testimony from firsthand knowledge.
Okay.
There may be exhibits shown on the screen, but that'll be up to the attorneys that are questioning you. All right. With that, then, Attorney Hitchcock Cross, whenever you are ready.
Great, thank you. Ms. Parmenter, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Where do you work presently?
The Hamilton Sussex School District.
Okay. Have you ever worked for the Germantown School District?
Yes.
About when was that?
2010 to 2021.
Oh, so about 11 years?
Yep.
That's a long. Why did you leave the Germantown School District?
There are multiple reasons. The environment was just not for me, so I wanted to move on.
I understand. What job did you have when you left the Germantown School District?
I was the payroll and benefits coordinator.
Okay. And who was your supervisor at that time?
I kind of reported to Brittany as well as Mike Altendorf. I'm sorry, yeah, so Mike Nowak from HR.
Okay. And you said Brittany before. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, Brittany Altendorf, yes.
Okay. And so I was going to ask you if you know Miss Altendorf, but I take it you know Miss Altendorf. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And at that time, what job did Miss Altendorf have?
She was the business director.
Okay. So you, was there ever a time when somebody else besides Miss Altendorf was your supervisor?
Yes. I worked there since 2018 in the business office, and Rick Erickson was the business director then.
Okay. And is it fair to say that there was a change in, let's say, how you were supervised from when Mr. Erickson supervised you to when Ms. Altendorf supervised you?
Yes.
Can you describe that briefly?
I guess I would say the environment changed a lot. It was difficult to work there because Brittany and I did not get along, I guess, that greatly. So it was just difficult to work there. She, to me, was, we just had some confrontations. I didn't always agree with some of the things she asked me to do as the payroll person. So it was definitely different.
I understand. I appreciate that. Can you, and we're just going to take this, I'm just generally so I can explain the flow of how I'm going to go. I'm sure you don't do this very often. I'm going to try to answer a more general question and then get into more specifics. Will that work for you?
Yes.
Okay.
One moment. Hold on. The other Mr. Erickson has logged in. I believe that's Richard Erickson. Mr. Erickson, at this point, there's a sequestration order in place for witnesses. So I'm going to remove you from the hearing. Attorney Hitchcock Cross's office is going to be in touch with you to coordinate when you should log in. And it looks like Mr. Lenz has also logged back in. I'm going to remove both of them at this point.
Just 1 second, Judge. Mr. Erickson, we will get you on next. I understand that you want to testify as soon as possible. I appreciate that, and we will get you on as soon as possible.
What does next mean? I'm on a lake in Monaco with my family.
I understand. I assume that's going to be about 20 minutes here.
All right. What do I do?
Log back in with the link provided.
Okay. So I mean, do I get out of this thing now?
Yes.
I can remove you from it, Mr. Erickson. This is ALJ Surge.
Okay.
And then you would just when you get communication, you would log back in the same way you had just done.
My
Okay,
paralegal will call you right now. Thank you.
okay. Please keep in mind, I'm up here with like 20 people, all my grandkids and that.
I appreciate that. We were trying to get you on first.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you. Thanks again. I'm sorry. So I don't know if my last question was this, but I will just try to re-ask it then. Was there any policy changes from Mr. Erickson's time as your supervisor to when Ms. Altendorf took over?
I mean, this was also, 4 years ago. So I guess the biggest one that I remember is, we discontinued using comp time. We used to use it in our system that was called Skyward. The hourly employees were allowed to, if they incurred any overtime, they were either allowed to have it paid out or they can bank comp time, which would be paid out at the end of the fiscal year. And then we did turn that off when Brittany came.
Okay, and how, when you say we, did you as a payroll person, did you turn that off?
Yes.
I mean, like physically,
All right,
yes.
one moment. We have another individual logging in. It looks like it's Mr. Neski. So Mr. Neski, I'm gonna remove you from the hearing. You haven't done anything wrong, but there's a sequestration order in place, and so witnesses can't be present during other testimony. Attorney Hitchcock Cross's office will coordinate with you when to log back in. All right, we're back to the 5.
Okay, so just be brief with my question. Did Ms. Altendorf instruct you to turn off the overtime?
Yes.
Okay.
And with the comp time piece, yes.
The comp time piece. Okay. And did you ever have any conflicts with Ms. Altendorf about removing the turning off the comp time piece, for lack of a better word?
The comp time as well as the overtime, I, in my role, didn't think it was right to remove people's overtime from their timesheet. yeah, I would say that we had a little bit of a conflict on a couple occasions.
Okay. And are you aware of whether or not anybody ever complained about the overtime, the changes in the overtime policy?
Yes, our employees did. There was another coworker of mine that ran the payroll until she also resigned. And between the two of us, we would, get all the questions, and we could not proceed with payroll without having these timesheets approved.
And did you ever communicate that to Ms. Altendorf?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever tell Ms. Altendorf about any Department of Labor regulations at any time?
Yeah, in one discussion, we had talked about the Fair Labor Standard Act, and that's why I did not feel comfortable changing the timesheets because these people worked over 40 and they were due the overtime either paid out or in comp time, but we had turned off the comp time part.
And despite you telling Ms. Altendorf about the Fair Labor Standards Act, you were still directed by the Germantown School District to continue to not pay people overtime. Is that fair?
So a point of clarification. So we were directed to not incur overtime. Okay. So therefore, I did not have to pay it out.
I understand.
So I could not override, I can't override it when I was doing the payroll. I couldn't not pay it out if it was on there. So she had me run a weekly report of people that incurred the overtime so that I could either change it or contact them to change their timesheet.
Okay, so you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that under the direction of Ms. Altendorf, you were aware that Germantown employees were working overtime, and yet you were either changing their overtime or directing them to change their overtime. Is that fair?
I am not with those employees. Like, we are in a whole separate building, so I could not verify if they did or not, I assume, but we have a true time system that people would clock in and out, and they would have overtime hours.
Okay, I understand. About how many weeks did you do this report for Ms. Altendorf?
I don't know, months at least, I'd say.
Okay. And is this, does this being ordered to let's say the overtime issue, did that play a part in your decision to resign?
Yes, along with the work environment, yes.
Okay, and could you just briefly explain what you mean by the work environment?
I just didn't think it was a professional work environment with the there was inappropriate language, raising of voices. We had a couple of incidents. She walked out on a meeting with me at one point. So I just didn't feel like it was going to work, that I was not able to work with her like that.
I understand. Besides the overtime numbers, were you ever directed by Ms. Altendorf to change any other documents or reports for the school district?
Object to the form of the question. The witness testified that she didn't change reports.
And that is her testimony, as I understand it. If that isn't correct, Attorney Hitchcock Cross, please go ahead and clarify that with the witness.
Well, okay, because I think there was two, maybe I misunderstood that. I heard an answer of you to say that if there was people who had overtime, you were either to contact them and tell them to change their overtime or to change it yourself. Did I misunderstand that?
That was the direction I was given. I cannot honestly tell you because I honestly don't remember from 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. If or how many times I did change it. If I did, we always put a comments in there. And this is our policy for our employees as well. If you ever change your timesheet, you're supposed to put a comment in there about why you're changing it. So if you're able to see the timesheets, there would be comments in there that would say removed overtime per BA is usually what I would have written that.
Oh.
And so would the employees.
Did you ever work overtime?
Yes.
What happened then?
Well, I mean, everyone was instructed to not work overtime. Then there was a time where, many times where I would not be able to get my work done in 40 hours. The other payroll person had resigned. But payroll needed to be run. So I definitely did work overtime that I did not put on my timesheet. Eventually, when the other payroll person left, we literally weren't able to run payroll with everything going on. So at some point, I mean, I did have overtime and I was paid out for the overtime I did have on my timesheet. There was a lot of overtime I did not put on my timesheet.
Okay, and that was, why did you not put that on your timesheet?
I knew Brittany would be mad, so I didn't. We had a conversation about it at one point, and this is an incident that I remember vividly. And I told her I was not able to do everything I needed to do and complete the time in the time frame that I needed to do it. I gave her a list of all my duties that I needed to do, plus the person that left. And then she cussed at me. And so after that, I just didn't even try to push it anymore. I didn't really, it wasn't worth it to me. I did not. Then that's pretty much when I decided that I can't work in an environment like this. And
I appreciate that. Did you ever tell Mr. Nowak or anybody at HR about these issues?
Yes, I don't know if it was like a formal complaint or anything after the one specific incident where Brittany left and her voice was raised. Other people had heard that. So when I left her office, they asked if I was okay, but someone went and told Mr. Nowak that something happened. And then he came and asked me to come into his office and tell him what happened. So I did.
And what had happened?
We were in a meeting about deductions and benefits, and she wasn't happy that way the codes were being pulled, and it didn't. She just needed some other data that we were not able to provide. She said used some inappropriate language because she was frustrated. That went on for a little bit. And then later on, she said that she needed, some kind of data for the reporting she needed to do. And then that's when I told her there's a lot going on, so I won't be able to do this, within 40 hours with everything else. And then she kind of got really mad and told me that I asked her to prioritize my work then, and then I would just stop after 40 hours. And then that's when I don't want to say the bad words, and said that, yeah, so anyway.
Do you
We have another witness on?
It's Miss Went.
I believe this is Miss Went.
Yeah.
Miss Went, this is ALJ Surge. You haven't done anything wrong, but I'm going to remove you from the hearing simply because there's a sequestration order in place. And so witnesses can't be present when another witness is testifying. Attorney Hitchcock Cross's office is going to coordinate with you when you should log in.
Back in. Okay, sounds good.
Thank
So
you.
just click off. Yep. Okay.
I can remove you from here.
Perfect.
Thank you. Ms. Parmenter, do you believe other district employees at Germantown knew of Ms. Altendorf's feelings about overtime? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Are you muted by any chance?
Ms. Parmenter, I don't believe you're muted, but you might have moved back so that the mic isn't picking you up.
Yes,
I'm sorry, thank you. And why do you believe that?
because people would ask how come they can, they have overtime and we're asking them to take it off. We would repeat that the policy, is to not incur the overtime, but there are definitely times of the year where they have to incur overtime because of the duties that they have. So I would just refer them to Brittany for an explanation.
Okay. And do you know Mr. Erickson sitting next to me?
Yes.
And how do you know him?
Just through work, he, came through the district office a lot. We worked with him a lot as far as payroll for his, for the people that reported to him.
Okay, so but fair to say he was also a district employee while you were working there?
Yes.
And did you ever discuss the overtime issue with him?
Yes, I mean, probably because we had to discuss it with all of the supervisors of anybody that had overtime.
Okay, do you know if he ever complained about the overtime issue?
Yes.
Okay, and how did he complain about it?
I mean, I can't remember a specific incident, but I know we had custodians, many that were putting in overtime. And then we would have to question with Don, and then he would have to try to explain why the overtime was needed.
Okay, I just have one last question. Just based on your knowledge and experience as a payroll person at Germantown, does the department that Mr. Donald Erickson worked with, did they frequently incur overtime prior to Ms. Altendorf?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I know this was not the favorite thing to do.
Attorney Pollard, go ahead with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Ms. Parmenter.
Good morning.
Is it true that Ms. Altendorf started her employment with the Germantown School District in 2020?
Yes.
And at that time, what your position was, payroll specialist, payroll and benefit?
Yes.
At the time in 2020, when Ms. Altendorf started, do you know if the district was facing a budget deficit?
I do not know the exact details about the budget because that was not part of my role, but being in the community, yes, we were having some budget issues.
Prior to Ms. Altendorf starting as the director of business, what was the district's practice regarding overtime pay?
If overtime was needed and approved by the supervisor, then it would be paid, and you could choose overtime or comp time.
Was there any limit to how much overtime or comp time an employee could work?
I don't know if they were told anything by their supervisor, but as far as payroll goes, no, there's not a limit set in the system.
You referenced comp time. How would that work?
So if you worked, say 42 hours in a week, then at the end of the week, every Friday, you're supposed to submit your timesheet. It would tell you that you had 2 hours of overtime. You could either keep it as overtime or choose it as comp time, and it would go in a comp time bank. And then you could use that comp time later on if you needed time off. If you had a comp time bank at the end of our fiscal year on 6/30, we would pay it out.
In that comp time bank, was there any limit to how much time could be accrued in that bank?
There was a policy in our handbook, I believe. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Based on your position as the payroll and benefits specialist, were you aware of any district employees accruing comp time in an amount which exceeded $10,000 in a single fiscal year?
I mean, we paid out several with comp time. I honestly couldn't tell you how much they were. So I honestly don't remember how much the balances were.
Do you have any recollection of the balances ever exceeding $10,000 for any employee?
It's possible. I honestly don't remember the amounts. I remember there were some big amounts, but if you were to ask me to guess, I would not be able to guess an amount. But there were some big amounts and there were some small amounts.
You had previously testified that after Ms. Altendorf began working with the district as the director of business services, employees were directed not to incur overtime. Is that your statement?
Yes.
Is it true that the policy was actually that employees needed to get approval from their supervisors before incurring overtime?
Yes.
So in reality, employees could work overtime, but they just needed to get it approved by their supervisor before doing so.
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree that that is appropriate fiscal management to require approval before the district would incur those additional expenses?
Objection. She's not qualified to answer that statement.
Attorney Pollard, what is the qualification? I realize she's a payroll specialist, but she's dealing with the payroll, not necessarily the budgetary issues. And I know she's testified previously that she wasn't aware of the budget or those issues specifically.
That's fine, Judge. I'll withdraw the question. Do you have any, well, I guess you strike that. You said you're familiar with Mr. Erickson, correct?
Don or Rick?
Don.
Yes.
Were you responsible in your position for reviewing Mr. Erickson's timesheets?
I'm actually not responsible for reviewing anyone's timesheet. I mean, I pick them up in payroll. So when you say review, I'm not actually certifying that they're correct or anything. By the time it gets to payroll, they've already been approved by a manager.
When you say you pick them up in payroll, what do you mean? What do you do with those timesheets?
Sorry, so if the appropriate approval is on the timesheets, then when I run the payroll process, it will pick up all of the timesheets that have been approved for payment.
Do you have any recollection of Mr. Erickson ever submitting a timesheet with overtime on it?
I honestly couldn't tell you. That was so long ago. That was so long ago.
Do you know if in Mr. Erickson's role as supervisor of building and grounds, do you know whether he was eligible for overtime in that position?
At one time, I thought he was salaried, so, but like I said, I don't remember the details. I only picked up the true payroll process, like actually running the payroll once the other payroll person left. So I did not look at it in detail like that.
Okay, so you don't know whether or not Mr. Erickson's eligible for overtime.
In his salaried role, he was not eligible for payment because our payroll system only pays out overtime for hourly employees.
Okay. Did I think you said previously that Mr. Erickson had complained about overtime. Is that correct?
I mean, I think many of the managers, including Mr. Erickson, yes, just questioned why we were questioning overtime on people's time sheets.
Did you have any discussion with Mr. Erickson where he said to you that he was complaining about overtime, or that he would be making a complaint about overtime?
I can't recall anything specific that he said something like that.
Okay.
Not to me anyway, I don't know.
Okay. All right, thank you. No more questions.
Attorney Hitchcock Cross, did you have any redirect?
No, we don't. Thank you. We
All right.
will, and we're trying to get through to the other Mr. Erickson now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Parmenter. You're free to go. I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You guys too.
Thank you very much. So, Judge, apparently there's a Danish way to spell Erickson and a Norwegian to spell Erickson, and one has an E and one has an O. And only thinking of that has only made it worse in my mind. And I'm like, extra confusing things by thinking about it. It's like when I bat. Yeah.
That little nugget of trivia is probably going to confuse me now for the rest of my life every time I see Erickson.
Well, passing it on is that's the only way to solve these problems. Yeah. Seriously, when you don't want people to log on, they all log on to now. We're doing just fine. Doing just fine.
Thank you. He's contacted. It should be like that.
Great. I think we were pretty fair to our 20 minutes.
I believe he is jumping in now.
We're online. Okay. And Judge, just for the record, my paralegal, Mr. Youngbluth, has been coming in and out of the room from time to time, but he will not be a witness.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Erickson. Thank you for jumping back in.
And Judge, we will call Mr. Rick Erickson, please.
Mr. Erickson, you are currently muted.
Well, how about now?
I can hear you just fine now. So my name is Joseph Surge. I'm the administrative law judge handling this hearing. You've been called as a witness. So the way this is going to work is in a moment I will swear you in, and then I will turn over the questioning to Attorney Hitchcock Cross. He'll have some questions for you, and then Attorney Pollard will cross-examine you, and we'll go back and forth until the parties have exhausted their questions, but there won't be any need to repeat things. So with that, I realize that there are other places you'd rather be this morning, so we're going to jump right in.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Can you please raise your right hand and tell me when your right hand is raised?
It's raised.
Well, actually, let me swear you in quickly. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. And please state your full name and spell it for the record.
Richard Erickson. Last name is spelled Ericksen.
Thank you. Attorney Hitchcock Cross. So it seems Mr. Erickson's going to be appearing by phone. Do you have any objection that he doesn't appear by video?
Thank you. I was going to mention that. No, we don't. And we appreciate him appearing.
Attorney Pollard, any objection to appearing by phone?
No, Judge.
All right. Mr. Erickson, is there anybody else around you at this point in time?
No.
All right. Do you have any documents related to this case in front of you or around you?
On the phone, I have 2 documents.
All right. And all I would ask is that you don't reference them during this testimony unless you're asked by one of the attorneys to reference them.
Understood.
All right. With that, Attorney Hitchcock Cross, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Okay. Did you work for the Germantown School District any time?
Yes.
And when did you last work for them?
My official retirement date was 5/20/2020.
Well, congratulations. What was your
Thank you.
position when you retired then?
Director of Business and Auxiliary Services.
Okay, and do you know Mr. Donald Erickson?
Yes.
How do you know him?
I hired him to replace the Aramark contract back around 2009 when the board decided to cancel their arrangement with the Germantown School District. And I brought him in as the director of buildings and grounds.
Okay, and then you supervised him, is that fair, throughout that
Yes.
time?
Yes.
Did you ever give him a performance review?
Yes, I believe one or two.
Okay, and just generally speaking, could you describe those performance reviews?
Well, what I recall is that I gave him probably positive and exemplary reviews in various areas.
Okay,
Then I don't have the document in front of me, so I can't recall the details. And I know that the process on performance reviews changed for the cabinet as they had to give them, through the years.
okay, and but just I guess from my understanding, you supervised Mr. Erickson for about how long?
Well, from the time he took the position, which I think was around 2009, until the day that I officially retired.
I got it. Okay, so about 11 years.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, and then during that time, have you ever known anybody to complain, any of Mr. Erickson's subordinates to complain about him?
Well, I'm sure in passing people in the hall, I heard some grumbling, but what I would characterize as nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, when I came in there, you had similar grumbling with the Aramark management staff, but nothing that I can recall that made much difference in our operations.
Okay, have you ever heard of Mr. Erickson yelling or screaming at anybody?
Well, I think him and I got into it once or twice, but not out in, I was with him a lot, especially during the referendum and meetings and committee meetings, walking hallways and all of that, and never heard him really go off on anybody that I can recall.
Okay. Now, in terms of training, do you believe that while you were supervising that Mr. Erickson adequately trained his staff?
Yeah, as I recall, we had ample, um, there were ample opportunities for the staff to be trained in a number of areas, areas that came out of the energy management program that we embarked upon that cost millions of dollars, and certain things resulting from the referendum, like pool management. He chaired a safety committee. I put him in charge of chairing that safety committee, and there was training that came from people like R&R Insurance and the workers' comp company. So yeah, and as I recall, we had all this stuff out on the district's appropriate webpage for when staff was notified, the appropriate staff, in his case, the buildings and ground staff, to review and read and ask questions.
And do you believe that Mr. Erickson had the ability to follow up on work requests?
Oh, sure.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm gonna ask you a series of these kind of questions here. Do you believe that he had the ability to ensure high levels of customer satisfaction?
Sure, I don't know why he wouldn't. I mean, that was a reflection on everybody, me, superintendent, the board, the principals.
Do you believe that Mr. Erickson had the ability to assign work to his team based upon their skills and abilities?
Well, I mean, the answer to that it's kind of a mixed. I have a mixed response to that. I mean, the answer is yes, but when individuals, especially on the custodial side of things, when they took positions, they had the job responsibilities that were given to them, reviewed with them. Um, so individuals that were hired knew what their roles were going to be and duties. More complicated because as systems change, like HVA systems, when we did some major upgrades, there had to be some retraining, and that retraining was provided to the individuals that were assigned to those areas.
Do you believe Mr. Erickson made his staff feel valued and appreciated?
I think so. He met with them multiple times throughout the years. I mean, throughout a year, uh, staff appreciation in the summer that I let him coordinate and take care of. I made it intentionally business manager free so that he could control the conversation and enjoy the interaction with his entire staff. So yeah, I never heard any complaints.
Okay. Do you,
So,
I appreciate that. How on overtime, can you speak to when you were in charge there that whether or not you approved any overtime?
well, you mean for whom?
And I appreciate that. Let's focus on Mr. Erickson's staff.
Well, yeah, I know that there was overtime approved, but I think he approved it, and I don't think I countersigned his staff's timesheets. I think he just did, and if there were any issues, he would bring them to me. But, you know, through my tenure there is no way you're going to take an operation that size, a $60 million budget, and then when the referendum passed, add another $100,000 worth of capital investments and not have overtime. It's just not possible. And especially with the school board wanting to, reduce staff or keep staff frozen and put people into more part-time positions. But I'm sure there was overtime and if there was, I would have been aware of it, as would have been the HR director and the superintendent. I can tell you that all three of us would have known.
Well, so then I guess in, let's just say May of 2020, do you believe it was possible to operate Mr. Erickson's department without overtime?
I would be very skeptical that it would be possible.
Okay, I appreciate that. And do you know Miss Billy Joe Mon?
Yes.
Okay, how do you know her?
She was essentially my secretary as well as Don's secretary. We kind of shared that duty, and there's history, relative to this in terms of the assistance that Aramark had clerical and otherwise, when they were here prior to his hiring in 2009 or whenever it was. And so I put her in my office, right outside my office, so that there was no, because of her relationship with Don, that there was no conflict of interest. And as we embarked on all these projects, millions of dollars of energy projects, and then referendum, safety committees, and other things, I needed her right there to help coordinate between the three of us, you know, all the things that happen in that regards.
Okay, and did you ever approve overtime for Miss Mon?
Yes.
Okay. Now, since you've left the district, have you been approached by any business managers?
I was approached by two business managers for two of my staff that left the business office with respect to reference check for their employment at their districts. That's it.
Okay, so and let's be, I'm gonna rephrase that and hopefully you can explain, and if I have that right. You're saying that there's two business managers reached out to you after you left for letters of reference. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, and did you give them the letters of reference?
We had verbal conversations. I gave letters of reference, I'm quite sure, to the two employees that applied for positions, one at Hamilton School District, Sussex Hamilton School District, and one at Nicolay. And those business managers called me.
Okay, do you know why they, well, I guess first of all, do you know if they also asked for references from Miss Altendorf?
I do not know.
Okay, do you know why those business managers left the district?
Objection, asking the witness to speculate, also hearsay.
Well, hearsay is allowed, and if they told
Hearsay
us.
is, yeah, hearsay is admissible. I just can't make a critical finding of fact on it. To the extent, Mr. Erickson, that you have firsthand knowledge of why they left, please go ahead and answer, but I don't want you to speculate.
Okay, but I need to correct something you said, why those business managers left. You meant business office employees.
Oh, very good. I appreciate that. So we're talking, and then please let me correct myself. The two people that approached you were business office employees, the one who went to Sussex Hamilton and the other one who went to Nicolay. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So do you have any information from them as to why they were leaving the district?
Well, more hearsay than anything, that they were not happy with the direction of the business office and found other opportunities with less inter-office politics and that type of thing.
Okay, I think I understand.